So the good news is the United States has approved sending F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine from Denmark and the Netherlands. Ukraine has been requesting them for air superiority purposes as well as ground attack purposes for months. Denmark is going to start receiving F-35s in October and will start pushing the F-16s to Ukraine shortly thereafter. Now there are obviously other people who can speak to the technical aspects of the F-16 and why it's so outstanding, and I encourage you to go look at them. Alex Hollings is probably one that is the best resource for that I know of on talking about the aviation aspect and capabilities of fighter jets such as the F-16. So here is the F-16, and I will say that the F-16 may not be the fastest aircraft on the battlefield, but it's extraordinarily maneuverable. It's probably the most maneuverable non-delta wing, non-thrust vectored fighter in production. And it certainly can outmatch the Russian MiG-29, which you see here. Now, there are arguments from U.S. experts that the Russian Su-35 can outmaneuver the F-16 due to thrust vectoring capability, but that remains to be seen. The Su-35 is 40% longer, 60% wider, and 12% taller, so it is a beast of an aircraft. The Su-35 can climb faster than the F-16 and has a higher ceiling, so that could be an issue for F-16 pilots, but the threat of surface-to-air missiles means most fights will likely occur close to the ground, and because the F-16 is far more advanced in radar capability, the fights will occur likely in beyond visual range, meaning they won't be able to see each other. The beyond visual range scenario leans heavily towards the F-16 being more successful. It likely would come out on top due to having a smaller radar cross-section and a much better radar and missile system in the AMRAAM, with the AMRAAM having a greater probability of success. Now within visual range, I would give the edge to the Su-35 though. That being said, according to Lieutenant Colonel Dan Hampton, who flew 151 combat missions in his career as an F-16 Wild Weasel pilot, says the Russian Su-35 is junk compared to the US F-16. He said the Su-35 is a typical Russian machine that looks good, but deep down, it's not that good of a plane, saying it looks good at air shows, but my personal opinion is that it's junk. Speaking about the F-16, retired General Philip Breedlove, the former NATO Supreme Allied Commander, said the integration of avionics and weapon systems are decades ahead of what Ukraine is flying now. There will be an increase in capability, increased radar range, increased weapons range, etc. But this is not the be-all to end-all. Now what he means is this is still a fourth generation fighter, the F-16 is. This is not the F-22, which could easily gain air superiority over Russia in days. The F-16 is still vulnerable to the same threats as the MiG-29, it's just more capable in general. However, there's a reason 25 countries operate the F-16 and currently 7 countries have more on order. Despite the aircraft being 40 years old, it's constantly sought after. General Dynamics, who makes the fighter jet, actually has a backlog of 148 aircraft to supply these countries. Meanwhile, only 4 countries operate the Su-35 and only 7 operate the F-15. But that begs the question, if we truly want to give Ukraine air superiority capability, why not give them the F-15, which are unmatched in the 4th generation in a beyond visual range fight? Or even, perhaps we should give them the F-18. Well, it seems the F-16 is best suited as an all-around aircraft for the Ukrainians. By the way, when you look at these aircraft, they're just much cooler than what Russia has. I mean, look at these. I mean, these are just beautiful lines on these aircraft, especially the F-22. That is a sexy jet right there compared to like what honestly looks like what we would think Russia would build. Now, to be fair, the Russian Su-57 is kind of cool looking, but let's be realistic about what its stealth capability is. Sukhoi, who makes the Su-57, claims that there's a radar cross-section goal of 0.1 to 1 meter squared on its ability to be seen. So what you see on the radar is between 0.1 meters and 1 meter in size. Now, for comparison, the F-117 Nighthawk had a radar cross-section of about 0.001 meters squared, making it 100 to 1,000 times more stealthy than the Su-57, and the F-117 retired 15 years ago in 2008. The F-22 has a radar cross-section of 0.0001 meters squared, which is at least 1,000 to 10,000 times smaller than the Su-57. What about the F-35? F-35 is 0.005 meters squared, meaning it's not as stealthy as the F-22, but it's still 500 to 5,000 times more stealthy than the Su-57. And honestly, there's really no data on the Chinese J-20 5th generation aircraft. So getting back on track with the F-16 versus F-15 versus F-18 debate on why we were sending them F-16s. Well, James Jones, who is an American F-15 pilot, had high praise for the F-16 when dogfighting it, saying what a little pain in the ass that thing is. Now, I mentioned wild weasels earlier. Wild weasels are used for surface-to-air missile platform hunting, something Ukraine needs. The F-16 is the aircraft picked specifically for that role in the United States right now. Dan Green, a former F-A-18 pilot with the U.S. Navy, flew F-18 Hornets for 10 years. He said the only competition in a dogfight was with the F-16. The F-15 was relatively big and slow and easy to beat in a close dogfight. Lieutenant Colonel Philip Malebranche flew numerous different versions of the F-16 as well as the F-18 Hornet in an exchange system with the U.S. Navy. He said the F-16 is still very capable versus the F-15. The F-18 Super Hornet is nowhere close to the F-16's thrust-to-weight ratio. The F-16 can climb 3,000 feet above the Hornet and then bunt over and put him in the HUD for a gunshot. Now, on top of that, on top of the capability praise for the F-16, there's additional things to consider. The cost per flight hour of the F-16 is 1/3 that of the F-15. And as stated, there are partner and allied nations that operate the F-16 nearby, such as Poland, Turkey, Denmark, Norway, Netherlands, Belgium, and the U.S. operates them in Italy and Germany. And this means they can assist in maintenance and parts logistics. However, you remember when I said this was good news? Well, the other side is there's some bad news as well. These aircraft likely won't be over Ukrainian skies until 2024. Better late than never, I suppose, but it's still an issue. This is because Ukraine only has 8 fighter pilots ready to begin immediate training because they can speak English fluently. And those pilots have been training. The 30 or so pilots they want to send to training additionally don't speak fluent English and have been taking online English classes in between sorties. Fortunately, most vaguely understand the language, but the learning curve on the F-16 versus the MiG-29 or 27 is somewhat steep given how much more advanced the F-16 is. So they want to be sure the communication between the trainer and the trainee is accurate. A coalition of 11 NATO countries agreed to begin training Ukrainian pilots starting later this month. And a U.S. National Guard analysis assessed that the Ukrainians could probably be trained to operate the aircraft in 4 months. However, it's going to take more time to get them the air skills and tactics training to turn them into airmen that can truly take full use of the F-16's capabilities. General Breedlove said, who I spoke about earlier, said if Ukrainians are not thoroughly trained in the tactics, you're not going to realize any of the benefits of having a real 4+ generation aircraft. However, Breedlove went on to say, we have always overestimated how long it's going to take to bring new weapon systems into the Ukrainian military, and they clearly outperform our expectations. So personally, one could expect the F-16 is on the battlefield probably by March of next year, which means they won't be able to impact the offensive operations before wintertime. But as I said before, better late than never.